So after making, I think it was like 3 personal videos that came out, in the summer, just want to make this one last personal video before finally starting, the Portuguese grammar guide that I would like to learn, in this year for this channel, right? I've made 3 personal videos where I just, talked freely about how I learned Spanish, and also did a small tier list of languages, ranking Spanish courses. But in this video specifically, I want to talk about how I would relearn Spanish again if I could start over, okay? Now, for those of you that don't know, I actually explained this in the previous video if you want to check it out, where basically I talked about how I learned Spanish in a university, in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which is an institution in Las Vegas, Nevada, the USA, where I spent 2 years learning grammar, okay, Spanish grammar, and then 2 years of basically taking 2 years of advanced Spanish courses that taught me basically like everything that I need to know about the language, also expanding my vocabulary and lexicon and other stuff like that, okay? But in this video, I just want to emphasize how I would relearn Spanish again if I could start over. This is a trend and idea that many people did on YouTube, so I kind of want to give my personal thoughts about it, okay? Now, specifically, I do not want to talk about, the educational aspect, because while I did learn, my register and understand the context of Spanish, which is useful to me, I do not want to, emphasize the educational part of my Spanish learning journey. What I specifically want to talk about is just, you can say, a personal strategy that I would myself use for, other languages that I would like to learn in the future, even including languages that I have on the channel, okay? I have complete grammar guides to languages that you can learn, like, like Russian, Hebrew, English, Spanish, German, Italian, and French. And all of these grammar guides present the purpose of learning the grammar as a basis of any language, and then basically expanding, the use of that language in the context that fits you, okay? So this is how I would relearn Spanish if I could start over, okay? Considering that, again, I learned grammar in 2 years in a university, I would say the 2 years of grammar is definitely a lot, which is why I would just condense it, okay? So my strategy would begin of just learning grammar. If I had the chance to relearn Spanish again, without, going to school, without going to university, my first step primarily will focus on the grammar as a basis, okay? And again, this depends on the language, but what I'm specifically talking about is learning and understanding the grammar that fits you, okay? While you may not use all of this grammar, you will definitely understand which grammar, fits you, which grammar is the most useful. Some tenses, some, moods, some words might not be that useful, to use, but definitely useful to know, okay? So my first step would be just, starting with the grammar as a basis. Again, depends on the language that you want to learn. And with Spanish, because I know in my tier list of languages, I ranked it as an S tier language, because, it's literally the easiest language ever made. What I would do is I would learn the grammar in about a week, okay? Depending on the language. I know the grammar guides on this channel, that's basically their purpose, is to provide a complete grammar guide and to understand which type of grammar fits you. And this can go, from, a week, maybe even a few days, but generally speaking, from a week to like a month. Again, depends on the language. So what I would do is I would learn the grammar of the, of the language of Spanish by watching my own grammar guide that I did on the channel, watching that grammar guide and learning the grammar in about a week. Then after that point comes the second stage of my strategy of, again, relearning Spanish, which would be just expand my vocabulary and expand my lexicon, and basically even, speak to myself, talk to myself to understand how I would, use the Spanish that I learned from the grammar. Basically, you can, split the strategy into 2 steps. The first step is learning the grammar as, kind of like a principal basis of the language, then understanding, which grammar fits you, and then the first stage evolves into the second stage, which is like expanding the words, even talking to yourself. And by basically expanding your vocabulary, your lexicon of the language, you are able to talk to yourself. And expanding doesn't just mean, like reading or, just watching videos. It could mean, watching movies or reading books, just talking to yourself, going out, to different places, like doing daily routines, like going to like a restaurant or your local store or a park or, I don't know, just, any social place where you can talk. And especially, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. There's a lot of Spanish speakers in this region. So, this language definitely helps me, okay? So this is how I would relearn Spanish, again, if I had the opportunity to, to relearn it, basically, right? Start with the grammar as the basis, which, for me, I would say personally, depends on the pace. For me, it would be like, learn the grammar in about a week, and then expand the vocabulary, the lexicon, expand your use of the language. While speaking, while reading, while listening, etc., okay? And I feel like this process, the second stage, would take, it could probably take, a few months to maybe like half a year. to become fluent in that language. That's basically my strategy. That's how I would relearn Spanish anew, right? Now, considering how I learned Spanish in the first place, in an institution, university, 2 years of grammar, and then 2 years of, advanced Spanish courses that expanded my use of Spanish, I would say that, yeah, it was definitely a useful strategy. It's just that it took way too long, okay? Way too long with this whole, learning grammar. Then you learn the advanced courses like linguistics and literature, and like grammar, composition, dialectology. So there's definitely a lot to take in from a language, but I would say primarily the main focus of any language is to speak it, okay? Most languages in the world are spoken, and Spanish is one of the easiest, if not the easiest language ever. So if I had the opportunity to relearn Spanish, I would just focus on the grammar, by watching my own grammar guide, that's about, 5 hours long, and dedicate, my time, maybe just, dedicate 1 hour per day, which means that I'm going to be able to finish the grammar in about a week, and then after that, focus on the second stage, which means that I can expand my vocabulary. This could range from a few months to like half a year, depending on how much fluent they really want to be in that language. Okay, so grammar, that's the basis, and then basically expansion. And this again could mean reading, listening, watching movies, going to social places. The expansion of the use of the language can have a lot of different factors in, okay? And I would even say that this is the strategy that I would implement to any language that there is on the channel, okay? I have 4, languages where I'm fluent, which are, Russian, Hebrew, English, and Spanish. But then German, Italian, and French, I'm still learning these languages. But, I have become, you can say an advanced speaker of the languages, but I'm not fluent in those languages because I need to expand, my words and my sentences, okay? So this strategy, which is, again, this strategy I would say works for me. It may or may not work for you, but everyone has to find their own rhythm, okay, of learning a language. The whole purpose of this channel and of the grammar guides also that you can find on the channel is to understand the basis of the grammar of any language that you want to learn. And basically, you focus on that, you realize and you understand which grammar fits you, and then after that, you begin expanding the language. Now, I was thinking of, making a few more personal videos regarding how I would personally expand all of the languages that I know, but I figured out, okay, let me just save those ideas maybe like, in the distant future, talk about that. But the point again in this video is how I would relearn Spanish if I could start over, which is, basically following a simple strategy. Just focus on the grammar, which, can take, a week, maybe a few weeks at best, and then just expand, talk to yourself, go to social places, and, maybe even use a, translator or like a dictionary for words that you don't know, because, every day you can find new words that you don't know, okay? So even though I'm a fluent speaker in Spanish that I, learned from a university, I'm not a native speaker of Spanish. So, that's the difference between fluency and being a native speaker. Native speaker is someone who knows everything. Fluent is someone who has a professional level of that language, in some fields, but maybe not all fields. Okay, so that's basically how I would relearn Spanish: grammar and expansion. That's basically it's a simple strategy, but it works for me. It may or may not work for you. That's really about it. That's basically the whole point of this video. That's how I would relearn Spanish if I could start again. It makes for a simple short video, but in my opinion, it's still very useful. And after this video, I wanted to make another video regarding my graduation, because I recently graduated from UNLV with a bachelor's degree in Spanish, but still have not received the diploma because it takes a long time to wait for the diploma to be received. So in the meantime, after this video, expect some Portuguese videos, because I do want to learn this language and implement the strategy that I mentioned here to learn that language. So yeah, it makes for a short, simple video, but at least it's useful. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you with the Portuguese grammar guide. I know this can expand over a few months, but then after that, maybe a personal video will come regarding graduation, but mostly emphasizing Portuguese videos. So yeah, thank you for watching. Peace.